In today's video, I'm sharing some plant care tips for this beautiful flowering plant that has been in bloom since November in our garden, and this is the Thanksgiving cactus or the Christmas cactus plant. We had purchased this plant a year ago, and this year there are a lot of blooms and they are continuously blooming in our garden. So, here you can see this plant has a lot of buds that are starting to form, which grows into a lot of beautiful flowers that stay in bloom for a few days. We had purchased this plant last year, and when it started to die back, we had repotted them into a hanging planter and accidentally planted both of the plants into the same planter. So, in this hanging basket, we have two plants that have grown really well right now, and we are getting blooms in deep pink and also in white. This is a succulent variety or a cactus plant that blooms really well with very little care, and these will grow beautifully in small containers in spots that receive a lot of bright light. We have placed this plant on our covered terrace in the northeast side, and it receives a lot of bright light during the morning times. So, these plants usually do well in spots with bright indirect light and don't really require a lot of direct sunlight. And if we are placing them in a spot with direct sunlight, that should be mostly only during the morning time and not the harsh afternoon sun. The potting mixture for this kind of cactus plant or a succulent plant is a well draining potting mixture that contains some cocoa peat with garden soil and perlite. Perlite will provide lot of good drainage to these plants, which is very important since these cactus plants are prone to root rot if their roots remain moist or wet for a very long time. We always make sure to water these plants only when the top soil is slightly dry, that is, once or twice a week. Watering more will keep the roots soggy and prevent these plants from flowering regularly. Our plants are growing in a very small hanging pot, and these are plants that like to be a little root bound. And when they are a little root bound, they tend to flower very beautifully, producing a lot of continuous blooms. It is okay for this plant to be root bound and grows well in small containers, but it is definitely important to have a good drainage in whatever container it is growing in. Not having good drainage will cause root rot problems and cause the plant to die back slowly. This plant usually blooms well during the cooler months, and in our garden, it has started blooming since November and is having continuous blooms and a lot of new flower bud formation on these plants. So, as you can see, this plant has a lot of flower buds in pink and white since we have two plants growing in this container. Once the buds start to form on this plant, make sure not to disturb the plant to prevent any drop of buds from the plant, and provide it with a lot of phosphorus rich fertilizer. And we have provided some bone meal and also seaweed granules as fertilizer that has helped this plant bring out a lot of buds and bloom continuously. This is a very beautiful plant that we can also grow indoors in spots where it receives a lot of bright indirect light. But make sure to place it in a spot where there is good air circulation to prevent any kind of pest infestation or fungal infections on the plant. Once the cool temperatures set in, this is a beautiful flowering plant that will continuously bloom throughout the winter or the cooler months. So, as I had mentioned previously, they have started blooming in November, and even towards the end of January, these plants are still in bloom and have continuous blooms on this plant. Once the temperatures start to warm up, this plant stops flowering and goes into a dormancy state. And this plant needs to be pruned back lightly so that it can produce a lot of new growth in the next flowering season. Make sure not to fertilize these plants during the dormancy period and only start fertilizing once the weather starts to cool again and it is time for these plants to produce a lot more new flowers in the new season. Continue to water as usual and make sure that the soil gets dry in between waterings and prevent any kind of fungal diseases or pest infestation during the dormancy period. I hope you enjoyed a view of these beautiful flowers in bloom in our garden. This is a plant that can survive for many years with the right kind of care and can be grown in small containers on balconies or as houseplants. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and support us for more gardening related videos. Thanks for watching Fresh from My Garden.